I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
So getting right into it, as we discussed in the intro, the preamble, if you may, the defensive dilemma. So we went and pulled a lot of stuff from our man, our friend, Newman at NOMI Footy on Twitter. Definitely go check him out because he is so good that influencers, quote unquote, are cropping his stuff and posting it as their own. That's when you know, Nick, you've made it, is when you get ripped off.
Yeah, and just a little PSA, okay? The internet is a wonderful place. It generally is filled with wonder, and people do incredible work like Newman here and creating content for people to enjoy. All you have to do as a person that likes that content is credit the fucking source of the content. It's not that hard. If you're a person who steals other people's content, you're a fucking moron, and that's it. I'm done. I'm done with this.
Well, it was also a moron. It was our back line for not joining the defensive press. Just
What a
bringing it all back
segue.
together.
What a segue.
Yeah, what he kind of highlighted was that, the front and midfield lines are all doing a really good job of moving up and pressing forward. But the defensive line is basically MIA when any of the presses have been occurring. So there's been a lack of synergy between the two, Nick. And I think that's where there is a solve, there is a path forward for what we're seeing, but ultimately there is no, we saw last season, the 15, meters between every line, right? Sarri wanted 15 between the front line, 15 between the middle, 15 between the back line. That was the maximum amount of space he wanted. And we're seeing a little bit more of an open canvas between the defensive, the midfield, and then the actual defenders.
Yeah, it to me screams of, I think, caught between two thoughts. So the first thought being that I believe that towards the end of last season, you saw Jorginho much tighter to the back line, and I think gave himself a lot less to do defensively because I think there was a better cohesive moment there at the end. And unfortunately for him, it lost. I think he lost a little bit of his ability to press up and complete some key passes in the final third, but it did, I think, make sure that our backline was a little bit protected. You're starting to see a backline who got a little bit too comfortable, Brandon, in preseason, playing a little bit further back, not pressing up as high, and that's creating now the gap because I think Frank wants the pivot to be playmakers, have the ability to both be playmakers, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, so if we go through Newman's tweets, he was saying that this issue of the back line not supporting the midfield and the forward line's press is something that goes back to Derby last season. Again, I didn't watch Derby. I am relying on other people who did their homework. But it's a good talking point. And so it's I don't know, to me it's kind of a weird thing. Like the defenders should know, they should recognize when the rest of the team is pressing, it has to be a lack of confidence in their ability to not hold the offside line, maybe to, not get in a foot race. There's something going on here that is a concern. Nick, you talk about Jorginho sitting farther back. Kante did too. We saw him, Maurizio, kind of blasted him in post-match press conferences that he needs to be tighter to Jorginho and some things like that. So, there's been a lot of positives about the Jorginho Kovacic pivot right now, or not even pivot shit. They're a holding two. All right, so rewind that one. But this image that we see in our script from Newman, there's genuinely 35 yards between midfielders, those holding two, and our back line, and everyone is running back. This guy's at midfield. No one within 40 yards. 20 yards, I'd say, 15, 20 yards. And he's running at our back line. Worst case scenario is a defender because once the press is broken, you then just have to delay. And watching Jorginho Kovacic run backwards to try to catch him, at some point you have to stop and defend your line, Nick.
Well, that's valid. I think you're also looking at the photo, and because Dan Emerson was playing so far up the field, he's in the bottom left corner of the photo, while everybody in the back line is on the right side of the photo. Like, that's where we get into trouble, right? Not everybody can play upfield all at once, and then the back line has to oh God, are we going to play the offside trap or not? Like, if you only have 3 guys back there, you definitely need protection from your midfielders, and there was none to be offered.
Yeah, and again, the best thing to do is to just maintain, retention of the ball, have your defenders push up and create a sustained, continued press against the opposition, so you don't put yourself in this position to have to worry about what your offside trap situation is going to be. I think Newman made a really good point just about the once the pressing is broken, that the defense has pretty much no protection from anyone in the midfield, because really everyone's a little bit too far spread out. They're really trying to use a lot of the pitch to move the ball around, to change side to side, and occasionally go direct up and drive down with pace. But it is something that I think will improve the couple of things, Brandon. One, N'Golo Kante coming back is a huge boost. I think that is something we're all looking forward to seeing more of. Whether he makes the United game is still a question. And then the other thing is a set defensive line. So whomever these 4 individuals are going to be in the back line, getting to play consistent minutes, 90 minutes together on a regular basis, so that they feel very comfortable about what's going to happen, who's going to do what, where they need to cover, how they press as a group. We've seen a lot of rotation this preseason. And I think while I am concerned, I am not overblowing it, because ultimately this is all about time, right? Time to get this right.
Yeah, I mean, Seb C has been a huge advocate and with tweets about this Conte being the kind of the magic bullet, Nick. Obviously, we know how wonderful his smile is, and he's even better at football, which is kind of confusing to me. I don't know how he does it.
I love that order, by the way. I love the order.
Smiling at football.
We'll have to see. I mean, look, N'Golo Kante, his ability to run someone down is fantastic. And I think his ability to read what's coming at him is even better. But if the team's not compact and it doesn't break down, I'm not, 100% sure N'Golo Kante will fix everything. I think he'll fix a lot because of just how dynamic and great he is. But that kind of goes into, well, A, you decide about N'Golo Kante, and then B, we have to transition into free kicks again as well, because that is another huge part of the defensive frailties. N'Golo Kante doesn't foul, right, outside the box, so that also helps solve the 2 problems. So I guess that's why I'm bringing both up at this point.
I think it's a bad idea to rely on N'Golo Kante to solve the defensive shape and position and depth issue. Our back line needs to be more compact. If we're going to play a high line, we got to play a high line. If we're not going to play a high line, then we got to, I think the pace has to be a little bit more methodical coming out of the back, so that everyone can move up slower together. To me, if you're relying on one guy to basically make that transition, that 20, 30-yard transition, win the ball back, protect the back line, push it forward, get it up to the pivot, it screams, Dan, of like, if he gets injured again, we're screwed.
Yeah, I think that, again, we talked about this last episode, but we talked about the fact that really N'Golo Kante is the one true world-class player on this team. And every time he has not played with Chelsea in the last couple of years that he has played for us, which is a very, very few games have not featured N'Golo Kante, we definitely look like a different side. The same way that when Eden Hazard was on fire and you pulled him out of the lineup, how different Chelsea looked. And so I agree to the point where you're talking about that we can't be overly reliant on N'Golo Kante to fix all of our problems. But I do think, just when you have a person beside you, like when you're doing a group project in school, like if you got partnered up with someone who is super gifted, like you're still going to do your work.
You rely on them to carry you, correct?
Well, I hope that's not what you did, but it sounds like that was probably the case. But potentially, they helped elevate the quality of the overall project. And I think that's what N'Golo Kante coming back on the pitch will do for the defense. I do agree, though, to your point, that he is not the panacea. He does not cure all for this defensive line. And the point Brandon made about set pieces is another massive, massive issue that needs additional coaching and repetition, because we're not committed to staying on our man.
When you talk about a high line, I immediately thought of David Luiz, and then it harkened back to JT under Andre Villas-Boas, and it didn't work with him. And obviously, there's all that off the field stuff, right? Of like AVB trying to push out Frank Lampard and Drogba and JT. The hell knows why? I don't know. But it's the same issue.
It really worked out for him, by the way. I'll say
Nailed
that.
it.
Yeah, he really killed it there.
Yeah. But think about it, right? Like I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out kind of, is that going to be something that could potentially, I guess like hurt him? I mean, we're talking about David Luiz's status as a leader and as, potential captain, or co-captain, second in line. I don't know. It's just something to keep track of. But if we're going to go like a really high line, that is something that hurts David Luiz.
It hurts Dave the most. I mean,
but you can give it up out wide. It's a lot less dangerous than down the middle.
I guess. I mean, I don't see a scenario that this group of players is adequately going to play a high line and get away with it. I don't think there is the coordination because they haven't been relying on that tactic for a long time. And my fear is, and I think when you watch other teams play high line, Dan, they have speed to catch up should they get burned on the rare occasion. Mm-hmm. This team does not have that speed. And I know Zuma's quick. I know David Luiz is waning. I know Aspie's waning. I know Rudiger's quick whenever he gets back. It doesn't seem like that is the way forward defensively, even though I know Newman's like tactical analysis is like, yeah, if they're going to do it, they have to do it this way, and it has to be awesome all the time.
I think it makes me excited for when someone like Reece James is healthy, and then you can kind of look at what the rotational options are within this defensive line to put someone with a little bit more pace in the lineup, someone who, also is going to be very good at picking out a cross and putting people into positions and really allow this team to kind of play that 4-2-3-1 effectively, which is going to let them push the ball forward up the wings and then cut it back in with the kind of direct, cross or pass.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm just thinking, ahead to United opening match season, depending on who's in their midfield, Pogba's there. He has the quality to, find a Martial or Rashford or whoever, in behind up top. Yeah, the first name that came to my mind was Jamie Vardy. I'm like, oh shit, we got to deal with Vardy on the counterattack again. Now you see Moise Kean going to Everton and, obviously Zaha at Palace. There's all these scrappy teams that are going to look to just break Chelsea with one ball over the top. And it could potentially be another issue. Now, thank God we have Kepa, right? Kepa can use his feet. Courtois, on the other hand, was a calamity coming out to and had far more red cards than any goalkeeper of his stature should have had. But that's another story for another day. So, again, just a lot of stuff to kind of take into account. I am a little concerned to hear that this is a recurring problem potentially for Frank from Derby to Chelsea. But at the same time, if you know it, right, you can work around it and try to improve it. So I have no doubts that Frank, Jody, and the rest of the team, Joe and Eddie are working on this very specifically because, Chelsea has to be sound defensively to unlock ourselves to go forward.
I mean, yeah. And I think, Dan, a guy that everyone's been really excited for is Kurt Zouma coming back into this team. He did not play well in this match. Like I really, when I look at him, I'm not seeing a guy who is showing the same level of confidence or ability on the ball that he showed at Everton last year. And then, I look at him as a guy who should be dominant on set piece defense, who should be in there just every time. It's impossible to get the ball beyond him and Tammy and, David or Christensen. Like, we have a few tall guys in there. I haven't seen it, and I love him. I think he's a great team guy. I don't see it right now.
Well, I still think he ends up being your starting pairing with David Luiz for United. I think that we talked about that for the past couple episodes. I think if he cannot interchange well and fit into Frank's plans, I think that Rudiger potentially is going to come back and, take that spot back over. I actually think the one that I was probably most disappointed with was Christensen, who had a little bit of a rough game, particularly in the first half. Ultimately he was the one who played one of the Mönchengladbach players on side so that they could take one of the goals. And it just, some of the positional awareness wasn't there. Second half, both Zuma and Christensen looked a lot better in terms of their performance. They settled down. They got into a little bit of a rhythm, but ultimately it is concerning. And I think we feel excited by the midfield and all the players there who are doing really, really well. I don't know if we feel as excited about striker and defense still. I think those are still the areas that we kind of feel uncomfortable about heading into this season.